that the NAB's chief economist, Oster, will retire in March next year after 32 years with the National Australia Bank. He'll be replaced by JB Weir's Chief Investment Officer, Sally Old, someone who's well known to viewers of our program. So with the final RBA decision of the year, it is appropriate we turn to the most experienced bank chief economist in the market. That is Oster. Thanks for your time today. Did you see any change, that significant change in the nuance of the Reserve Bank language today?
I think Ed had it right in terms of the nuance. What I think essentially they're saying is they can see downside risks for the economy. And in that sort of environment, they're sort of ruling out the idea that they're thinking of increasing rates. Now, if actually cut rates by February, I think you'd need some pretty bad labour market reads. And that's the thing that you would sort of look for. But at the end of the day, we're still thinking April, May is more likely because we don't expect the labour market to deteriorate. But we do expect that they're going to be cutting rates significantly. Or basically, we have the cash rate going down to 3.1%. The market's got it at 3.5%. In some ways, really, it's not so much when they start, but where they finish. And to me, I'd still say April, May is more likely than February. But it's now no longer impossible, whereas I think it was before.
Well, you heard there Michelle Bullock, the governor, talking about she believes that the governments are on side in the fight against inflation. But many people, of course, point to that record spending. Ed pointed to it there. And the question is whether, in fact, they've been almost counterproductive in regards to the inflation fight as compared with the Reserve Bank.
Well, I still think the most important thing is consumption. And so if the consumer stops spending, and they've been weaker than the RBA expected, although pretty in line with what we're thinking, that would be more than outweighing fiscal policy. So is it helping? No. Is it making it impossible for the RBA to cut rates? No. So I think really the focus is more on the consumer and the labour market. But given we're all about to go into an election mode soon, I don't expect to see fiscal policy, particularly at the federal level, being more restrictive, if I can put it that way.
No, well, that's the point, because governments spend when they're going into an election cycle. We're probably likely to see the mid-year financial and economic outlook or fiscal and economic outlook in the next week or so. That's going to show a deterioration in the budget, largely because of resources. And even the bracket creep that the government's picking up this extra revenue isn't going to be enough to offset a lot of that.
Well, I think they'll find... Well, basically what's happened is the government's just implemented its own policies, but they've ended up with surpluses because commodity prices are high. And as you said, bracket creep is helping. As we go forward, I think the world economy is still struggling and commodity prices will come down. They'll make that forecast. And as soon as they do that, basically the fiscal deficit will deteriorate quite a lot. You have to be careful because they're also moving increasing amounts of money into essentially what they saw profit and losses statements so that they're outside the budget, if I can put it that way.
Just one other aspect of this. I was going to say there you heard Michelle Bullock talking about prices from this inflation cycle still being 16% higher. So even if inflation went to zero tomorrow, the fact is that households would still be struggling under the burden of those increased prices. This is about wages and prices, whether they're keeping up with each other.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. And then we see it, for example, in the construction industry where, you've had these massive, even more increases in prices. Now, the prices are not going down. So if you're thinking you're a builder, your problem is your price of cement and your price of all your other stuff hasn't come down. And so the question is, well, can I still make a profit in those higher prices? And the answer is probably not. So that's sort of slowing down the construction industry as well. So, the price effect is still hard. If unemployment, however, stays low, then the consumer can juggle for a while. So they can basically say, well, I'll get extra income by working 2 jobs. I'll basically either cut back on my spending or buy less quality spending, but I can sort of survive for a little while until those rate cuts arrive.
Very good, Alan Oster. Always good to chat to you. You've done it for such a long time for us. We'll certainly chat before you depart the National Australia Bank. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Ross.